When my niece Sarah called me on a Friday afternoon, her voice sounded strained, almost desperate. "Auntie Rita, I need a huge favor. Can you watch Emma and Lucas this weekend? Just 2 days. Michael and I need to work some things out." I looked at my 2 grandnieces' faces on the video call. Emma was 7, with those big brown eyes that reminded me of my late sister. Lucas was 4, still believing the world was a safe place. How could I say no? "Of course, sweetheart," I told her. "Bring them over tonight." Sarah arrived at 9 p.m. with 2 small backpacks and children who were already in their pajamas. She hugged them quickly, too quickly, and practically ran back to her car. "I'll call you tomorrow," she shouted through the window. "Thank you so much, Auntie. You're a lifesaver." That was 3 months ago. But what I discovered about why she left would make my blood run cold. The first week, I thought it was just a difficult time in her marriage. Sarah had always been dramatic, always made small problems seem like catastrophes. When she didn't answer my calls, I told myself she needed space. When the weekend turned into a week, I started to worry. "Auntie Rita," Emma asked me on day 8, "when is Mommy coming back?" "Soon, my love," I lied, feeling my heart break a little. "Very soon." But Sarah didn't come back. Her phone was disconnected, her social media accounts were deleted. On day 12, I drove to the apartment where she lived with Michael and the children. The landlord, Mr. Chen, recognized me immediately. "Oh, you're Sarah's aunt. I'm sorry about what happened." My heart stopped. "What happened?" "You don't know?" He looked genuinely surprised. "They abandoned the lease 3 weeks ago, left in the middle of the night. Took everything valuable and left me with $4,000 in unpaid rent and a trashed apartment. 3 weeks. She had already left 3 weeks ago when she called me. She had already abandoned her home, her life, her children, and she had looked me in the eye and lied." Mr. Chen unlocked the door, and what I saw inside made me sick. It wasn't just empty, it was destroyed. Holes punched in walls, trash everywhere. The bathroom mirror was shattered, and spray painted across the living room wall in red paint were the words, "Fresh start." "Mr. Chen," I said slowly, "where did they go?" "No idea. But the police came by last week asking the same question." He handed me a business card. "Detective Morrison. He said to call him if anyone from the family contacted me." Police. Why were the police looking for Sarah? I called Detective Morrison from my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "Mrs. Rita Blackwood," he confirmed. "Yes, we've been trying to locate Sarah Chen and Michael Harrison. Are you aware that you have their children?" "She asked me to watch them for the weekend. That was 3 months ago." There was a long silence. "Mrs. Blackwood, I need you to come to the station. There are things you need to know about your niece." At the police station, Detective Morrison sat me down in a small room and opened a file that seemed impossibly thick for someone as young as Sarah. "Mrs. Blackwood, your niece and her husband are wanted for fraud. They've been running a rental scam across 3 states. They rent properties, live there for a few months without paying, then disappear and do it again somewhere else. They've stolen approximately $47,000 from landlords in the past 2 years. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. "But Sarah has a job. She works in marketing." "No, ma'am, she doesn't. Neither of them have held legitimate employment in over 3 years. The marketing job was a lie. They've been living entirely off credit card fraud and rental scams." He pulled out more papers, photos of Sarah and Michael at fancy restaurants, at resorts, living a life I had envied whenever I saw her social media posts. All of it paid for with stolen money. "There's more," Detective Morrison said gently. "We have evidence they were planning to disappear for months. They sold most of their possessions online. They withdrew all their bank accounts. And Mrs. Blackwood, we found something in their abandoned apartment that concerns you." He showed me a photo. It was a handwritten list in Sarah's handwriting, titled Exit Plan. And there, on line 7, it said, "Drop kids with Aunt Rita Friday night. She's too soft to call cops. Gives us clean break. Too soft. She had calculated my love, weaponized my kindness, and used it to abandon her children. We believe they left the country, Detective Morrison continued. We have records of them crossing into Mexico on March 3rd. After that, the trail goes cold. The room was spinning. The children, what happens to Emma and Lucas? That depends. Are you willing to take custody? Otherwise, they go into the system.
I thought about 7-year-old Emma, who still set a place at the table for her mother every night. I thought about Lucas, who slept with the stuffed bunny Sarah had given him, crying into its worn fur. And I thought about Sarah's calculated cruelty. Too soft. I'll take them, I said. Whatever I have to do, I'll take them. But as I was leaving the station, Detective Morrison called me back. Mrs. Blackwood, one more thing. We found emails between Sarah and someone else. Planning messages. We think Michael isn't the only person involved in this. What do you mean? We think she had a partner who helped her plan the escape. Someone with legal knowledge. We're still investigating, but I wanted you to be careful. If that person contacts you, call me immediately. I drove home in a daze, my mind trying to process everything. Sarah wasn't just a bad mother. She was a criminal. She had used her own children as cover for her crimes, and when she needed to disappear, she had dumped them on me like unwanted furniture. That night, after I put Emma and Lucas to bed, I sat down and calculated my finances. My retirement pension was $1,847 a month. My mortgage was paid off, thank God, but utilities, food, insurance, and basic necessities cost about $1,200. That left $647 for emergencies, savings, and anything extra. Now I had 2 children. School supplies, clothes they'd outgrow every few months, doctor's visits, food for growing kids. I estimated I'd need at least an additional $1,500 a month. I had $34,000 in savings. The money my late husband George had left me. Money I'd been saving for the day I might need nursing care, for emergencies, for the security of knowing I wouldn't be a burden on anyone. At this rate, that money would last maybe 18 months if nothing went wrong. And with 2 young children, things always went wrong. I started using my savings. Every month, I withdrew a little more. Every month, I watched that number drop. $34,000. $31,000. $28,000. Then, exactly 11 weeks after Sarah had disappeared, my phone rang at 3 a.m. It was an unknown international number. Something made me answer. Auntie Rita? Sarah's voice sounded different. Lighter. Happy. I wanted to check in on you and the kids. The rage that consumed me was like nothing I'd ever felt. Check in? Sarah, where are you? I'm in Costa Rica. Oh, Auntie, it's beautiful here. Michael and I found this amazing villa right on the beach. We're finally living the life we always deserved. Living the life they deserved. With stolen money. While their children cried themselves to sleep. The police are looking for you, I said coldly. She laughed. Let them look. We're never coming back, Auntie. We've got new identities, new lives. We're free. And your children? That's why I'm calling. I need you to sign some papers for me. I'm emailing them to you. It's just a temporary guardianship thing. It'll make everything easier for you, with school and doctors and stuff. I opened my laptop with shaking hands. The email was already there. I opened the attachment and my blood turned to ice. It wasn't temporary guardianship. It was a complete termination of parental rights. But there was more. Hidden in the legal language was a clause that said by signing, I agreed not to pursue any financial support or reimbursement from the biological parents. She wanted to erase them from her children's lives completely, and make sure I couldn't come after her for the money she owed them. Sarah, I said slowly, do you understand what you're asking me to sign? Just sign it, Auntie. It's better this way. Clean break for everyone. You realize I've spent over $15,000 of my retirement savings on your children in 3 months? There was a pause. Well, that was your choice. I never asked you to spoil them. Spoil them. Food and shelter and school supplies were spoiling them. There's one more thing I need, Sarah continued, her voice taking on that manipulative sweetness I knew so well. I need you to access my storage unit and send me some things. There are some items there that are sentimental. I'll text you the address and code. After she hung up, the text came through. But something felt wrong. Sarah had never been sentimental about anything. The next morning, I called Detective Morrison. Mrs. Blackwood, do not go to that storage unit, he said immediately. Let me send officers there first. If she's asking you to access it, there's something there she wants that we haven't found. 3 hours later, Detective Morrison called me back. His voice was grim. Mrs. Blackwood, that storage unit contained $89,000 in cash. Money from their scams. She was going to have you mail it to her. So that was it. She hadn't called to check on her children. She had called to turn me into an unwitting accomplice in money laundering. But there's something else, he continued. We found documents in that unit. Plans. And Mrs. Blackwood, you're in them. What do you mean? Sarah had a plan for if she ever got caught. She was going to claim you were part of the scheme. That you knew everything and helped her. She had faked documents that made it look like you had received payments from her victims. I couldn't breathe. My own niece, my dead sister's daughter, had been planning to frame me for her crimes. Detective, what do I do? You cooperate fully with us. And you never, under any circumstances, sign those papers she sent you. That afternoon, I hired a lawyer. Mr. Patterson was a family attorney who had helped me with George's will years ago. When I showed him everything, the termination papers, the police reports, the financial records, his face grew darker and darker. Mrs. Blackwood, he said finally, we're going to file for full legal custody. But we're also going to file a lawsuit against Sarah for child abandonment and financial compensation. Even if she's in Costa Rica, even if we never see a penny, it needs to be on record what she did. Will it work? The custody? Absolutely. The money? He shook his head. Probably not. But it's about creating a legal record to protect you and the children. The custody hearing was 6 months later. Sarah didn't show up, of course. But her lawyer did, a sleazy man named Richards who made my skin crawl. Your Honor, Richards said, my client is willing to sign away her parental rights on one condition: Mrs. Blackwood must sign a waiver of any financial claims. The judge, a stern woman named Martinez, looked at him over her glasses. Counselor, let me make sure I understand. Your client abandoned her children with a 68-year-old woman, fled the country to avoid fraud charges, and is now trying to negotiate the terms of giving up her children? Your Honor, my client has rights. Your client has responsibilities, Judge Martinez interrupted. Responsibilities she abdicated the moment she dropped those children off and disappeared. Mrs. Blackwood, do you want full custody of Emma and Lucas? I stood up. Yes, Your Honor. They're my family. Then you have it. Full legal custody, effective immediately. And Mr. Richards, you tell your client that I'm ordering her to pay $800 a month in child support, plus reimbursement of Mrs. Blackwood's expenses to date. If she ever sets foot in this country again, she'll be arrested. I had one. But as I was leaving the courthouse, my phone rang. Another international number. This time, it was Michael. You stupid old woman, he hissed. You just cost us everything. That judge's order means we can never come back. Our families are here. Our whole lives are here. You should have thought about that before you committed fraud and abandoned your children. Those brats aren't mine anyway, he spat. Emma is, but Lucas? That's why Sarah wanted to leave him. He's not my kid. The line went dead. I stood there on the courthouse steps, processing what he'd just said. Lucas wasn't Michael's son. Did Sarah know? Is that why she'd found it easier to leave him? That night, I looked at Lucas sleeping in his bed, his small face peaceful, completely unaware of the rejection that had marked his entire short life. And I made a decision. He would never know. Emma would never know. The truth would die with me. A year passed. The court order for child support went ignored, of course. Sarah and Michael were safely in Costa Rica, living off their stolen money, never to return. I spent my savings. All of it. My emergency fund, my nest egg, the security blanket George had left me. I spent it on Emma's braces and Lucas's speech therapy. On birthday parties and school field trips and winter coats they'd outgrow in 6 months. I was broke. My retirement account had $847 left in it. But Emma was thriving in school, and Lucas had finally stopped asking when Mommy was coming back. Then, on a Tuesday morning, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a woman in her 60s standing there, her eyes red from crying. "Are you Rita Blackwood?" she asked. "Yes. I'm Patricia Harrison. Michael's mother." She took a shaky breath. "Can I see my grandson?" Everything in me wanted to slam the door. This was the woman who had raised the man who had called Lucas a brat, who had helped destroy my niece's life. But then I saw the pain in her eyes. A pain I recognized. The pain of being abandoned by your own child. "Come in," I said. Patricia sat in my kitchen, crying as she told me her story. Michael had stolen from her too. $30,000 from her retirement. He'd told her it was for a business investment. She'd found out the truth when the police came to her door. "I didn't know about the children," she sobbed. "I didn't know he had abandoned them. He told me they were with Sarah's family, that it was temporary." "Do you want to see them?" I asked. She nodded, wiping her tears. When Lucas came home from preschool, I introduced him to his grandmother. I watched as Patricia's face transformed when she saw him, as love replaced pain. "He looks just like Michael did at that age," she whispered. I didn't tell her what Michael had said about Lucas. Some truths were too cruel to share. Patricia became part of our lives. She helped with babysitting. She contributed what she could financially, which wasn't much, but it helped. She gave Lucas the grandparent relationship he deserved. 2 years after Sarah left, I was down to my last $200 when an envelope arrived in the mail. It was from Costa Rica. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a short note in Sarah's handwriting. "Auntie Rita, I'm sorry for everything. I know I can never make it right, but this is a start. I'm pregnant again. It's made me think about Emma and Lucas. Tell them I'm sorry. S." I stared at that check for a long time. $5,000. Not even a third of what I'd spent. Not even close to compensation for 2 years of raising her children. But what made me sickest was the last line. She was pregnant again. Another child who would be born to a criminal, to a woman who had already proven she would abandon her children when they became inconvenient. I didn't cash the check. I put it in an envelope with copies of every bill, every receipt, every expense from the past 2 years. The total was $67,842.19. I mailed it back to the return address with a single sentence: "This is what your children cost. They deserved more than you ever gave them." 3 months later, another letter arrived. This time, it was from a lawyer in Costa Rica. Sarah was dead. She had died in childbirth. The baby, a girl, had survived. And in Sarah's will, she had named me as the baby's guardian. I sat at my kitchen table, reading that letter over and over again. Sarah's final act of cruelty. Even in death, she was trying to burden me with her responsibilities. The lawyer explained that if I didn't take the baby, she would go into the Costa Rican foster system. Michael had refused to take her. He disappeared the day Sarah died. I was 71 years old. I was broke. I was exhausted. I was raising 2 children I hadn't planned for. And Sarah wanted me to take a third. I called Patricia. "Did you hear about Sarah?" "Yes," she said quietly. "And the baby?" Michael called me. He said he's not taking her. He said she probably isn't even his. There it was again. The question of paternity, used as an excuse to abandon an innocent child. "What are you going to do?" Patricia asked. I thought about Emma and Lucas, asleep in their beds. I thought about how they'd grown, how they'd healed, how they'd learned to trust again despite everything. And I thought about a newborn baby girl in Costa Rica, alone in the world except for a grandmother who had already given everything. "I don't know," I admitted. "I honestly don't know." That night, I talked to Emma. She was 9 now, old enough to understand some of what had happened. "Mom," she said. She called me Mom now, not Auntie. "If there's a baby who needs a family, and we're her family, shouldn't we help her?" Out of the mouths of babes. It took 4 months of legal battles, of fundraising, of applying for assistance programs I'd been too proud to consider before. But eventually, baby Grace came home to us. She was 3 months old when I held her for the first time at the airport. She had Sarah's eyes, but when she looked at me, there was no recognition of the mother who had died giving birth to her. There was only the innocent trust of a baby who didn't yet know how to be disappointed. I am now 72 years old. I have 3 children under the age of 10. My retirement savings are gone. My plans to travel are cancelled. My golden years have become years of diapers and homework and parent-teacher conferences. Last month, Emma won a writing contest at school. Her essay was titled My Hero. She wrote about me. About how I had saved her and Lucas when no one else would. About how I had taught her that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up. In the audience, Patricia held baby Grace, both of them crying as Emma read her words. Lucas sat next to me, holding my hand, his small face so proud of his big sister. And I realized something. Sarah had tried to destroy me with her abandonment, her manipulation, her final act of leaving me another child. She had thought I was too soft, that my kindness was weakness. But she was wrong. My softness was my strength. My ability to love was my power. And while she had died alone in a foreign country, having alienated everyone who had ever cared about her, I was surrounded by a family I had built from the wreckage she left behind. 3 weeks ago, I got a call from Detective Morrison. They'd found Michael. He'd been arrested in Panama for fraud. He was being extradited to the United States. "Mrs. Blackwood," Detective Morrison said, "the prosecutor wants to know if you'll testify about what Michael and Sarah did. About the abandonment, the attempted frame job, everything. Will it help? It might add years to his sentence." I thought about it for a long moment. Thought about revenge, about justice, about whether putting Michael in prison for longer would change anything. "No," I said finally. "I'm done with them. They've taken enough of my energy. I'm spending what I have left on my children. Because that's what Emma, Lucas, and Grace were now. My children. Not my grandniece and grandnephew and grandniece. Not Sarah's abandoned mistakes. Mine." Last night, Grace said her first word. She looked at me and said Mama. And I realized that Sarah had been right about one thing. I was too soft to call the cops that first night. Too soft to turn away children who needed me. Too soft to protect myself from being hurt. But that softness had saved 3 lives. That softness had built a family from nothing. That softness had turned tragedy into love. My name is Rita Blackwood. I'm 72 years old, and I'm raising 3 children on an empty bank account and a full heart. And you know what? I wouldn't change a thing. If you liked my story, you can support me by making a donation so I can write more stories. Thank you in advance. And you, what would you do in this person's place?